Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube live powered by Jani-King. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, got Spencer Forsythe on the board. And I don't know, Sooner fans. I don't know. I don't even know what to say anymore. But Parker, take it away.
Yeah, folks, this live stream is brought to you this week and every week by our good friends at Jani-King. Now, of course, Jani-King, as many of you well know, if you're regular viewers slash listeners, they're the greatest team to ever clean and a proud sponsor of OU athletics, albeit probably not as proud as they would be if Oklahoma were good at football right now. They deliver spotless results from stadiums to any size business across the country. You can check them out at janiking.com for unbeatable commercial cleaning services. Enjoy it while it lasts, Brandon. I think this is my last show, last podcast, last whatever in this home studio. I think as of later this week, we will be completely moved in at the new house, and I will have a much sexier setup than this, although it has served me well for the last year and a half.
Well, I guess the ambiance, the nostalgia of the OG studio being gone is it's going to be weird to see, but excited to see the new studio and what that entails. Man, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know. This is just one of those podcasts and lives where I don't even know what to say anymore. I feel like just kind of like a hamster spinning its wheels at this point in the season. Not really knowing. I, I just don't. I don't know. I don't know, man. Like I give it maybe 2.5% chance that they win one of the two games at the end of the season.
By the way, for those of you that just hit the chat and mentioned that I was having mic issues, thank you. I think it should be fixed now. So hopefully you can hear me a lot better. But yeah, Brandon, I mean, look, the brutal reality is unless Alabama hands Oklahoma the game, unless LSU hands Oklahoma the game, and if they do hand them the game, Oklahoma's going to actually have to take it rather than hand it right back like they did against Missouri. But unless that happens with either Alabama or LSU, Oklahoma's not winning either of those two games. This is a bad football team, Brandon. All the hallmarks of a bad football team, this team has. And that's not to say there aren't good players, because there are, right? Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman.
No, they're talented. The team is loaded. It's just something's not right. I don't know, man. Like, yeah, injuries, I get it. There's like 11 dudes that probably would be playing significant minutes that is on the availability report right now, if not more. I jeez. I don't know. I mean, I just I don't know. Something's not right. Like, look, I guess here's where I stand.
Okay.
And people are. I'm not going to say where any of this stuff comes from. I'm just going to kind of leave this kind of really vague, just because of the situation it is. I'm going to preface it by saying I want Venables to be successful. I love BV. I love him as a person.
It's hard to dislike Brent Venables.
But like
any and all criticisms of Brent Venables are certainly not a referendum on who he is as a person, because he's a guy that everybody wants to succeed. Everybody in the OU circle, right? Like, it's not as if anybody, and you even saw this with Lincoln Riley. Like, there were people that were not fans of Lincoln Riley amongst the OU contingent. And of course they wanted OU to succeed, but like there's nobody that has an explicitly negative opinion of Brent Venables as a human being.
You can't. He is great with my kids. Super great with my kids. I mean, I can't. Their stories one of these days I could tell. but it's just like I, and that's what makes it hard for what I'm about to say. Um, I just don't know if it's going to work. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work anymore. Like,
Here's the brutal reality, Brandon. Like we all have our opinions of where this program can go and is going under Brent Venables, but our opinions don't matter. Ultimately, Joe Castiglione's opinion might not even matter, because if there are enough influential figures in the donor circle that help subsidize the athletic department with massive donations, and enough of those people band together and say, we want the Brent Venables era to be over, then the Brent Venables era will be over. And if the Sooners go 5-7, as it looks like they will, there's certainly a world in which Brent Venables is not retained. There is so much hanging on how these last two games look, not necessarily what the outcomes are, because frankly,
exactly.
I don't think it matters who plays quarterback at this point. I don't think it matters who's calling the plays. The overwhelming odds are you're not beating Alabama or LSU, and one or both of those teams is going to have to play down to your level for all 60 minutes to give you a shot in that football game. But it's more about will this team rally around their head coach? Are they going to show some fight? Are they going to show that they haven't given up on Venables and he hasn't lost the locker room? Or are they just going to roll over and die? Because if that happens, it's really, really hard to convince anybody that this thing is going in the right direction heading into what would be year 4.
Yeah. Look, and people are saying, well, if you're going to divide the fan base, give us a reason why you don't think it's going to work. Why do I not think it's going to work? I haven't said explicitly. I said I'm not sure it's going to work, because granted, if they give him another year, and look, I'm almost torn on how I feel about this, because it obviously I want him to keep his job, because I want that staff around, because they're, again, much like BV, a lot of them are just great human beings, and they're good recruiters, they're good coaches. Like, it's just it feels like just BV's tenure has been cursed from the jump. No matter what bad could happen, it's happened. And you just, something's got to change, whether it's how they go about practice, whether it's how they go about the off season, whether it's how they go about the culture part doesn't need changed. But I think if you're, when you hire an OC, and if that's like his feet up or against the wall, or against the hot coals, the lava coals, right? Like, they're pressed up against it. This is what you have to do to be retained. I feel like his Dan Mullen or bust, or I think people are going to laugh, Bobby Petrie, somebody with some head coaching experience that can balance the defense offense kind of power struggle that there is, because you didn't have that under Levy. Like, you saw it because they had a top 5 offense or a top 10 offense every year, or both years that he was there. You need somebody that's going to be able to come in that BV respects, and that he isn't going to try to walk all over. And that's my initial feeling to it. And I know people think it's crazy with the Dan Mullen idea and some of that, but well, he doesn't recruit. Dude, you don't need him to recruit.
No.
You don't need him to recruit. You have, if the staff as it stands, if you leave everybody alone, and granted, my gut says Joe John Finley wants to be calling plays somewhere. So he probably would go somewhere else that, and I have no source on that. That's just my gut saying that's where because that's what he wanted to do to begin with. He wanted to be the play caller and start the season. Do I think it's different if Joe John starts the season as a play caller? I think I think the offense is better.
Yeah.
I think the offense is better if Kevin Johns is the quarterback coach to start the season. Yes, I do. And again, much like, I just don't like saying that about Seth Luttrell, good dude, friend forever, for years. but like, it's true. It's true. You can't skirt the truth. It's true. And so uh, that has to be something that Haraz and Castiglione say. They've got to be like, you're hiring somebody with head coaching experience as an offensive coordinator. I don't care if they're G5. I don't care if they're sitting off to the side, not doing anything right now, like Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen has won 100+ games as a head coach.
Yep.
That dude has got some. And then look, the crazy part is, and I talked to somebody last night that is just like well versed in football. They're high up in the media world. They know the OU everything. And they literally said, if they hired Dan Mullen and let's say BV goes 7-5 next year and the fans just, and everybody just decides, okay, that's it. You could retain the defensive staff. You could retain the offensive staff if you just brought Dan Mullen up and made him the head coach. He's been successful.
Mm-hmm.
So like there would be a way to make an easy transition there. And you get to keep all of your really good recruiters. Hypothetically, obviously, this is all hypothetical. Outside of that, I don't know, Parker. Like I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I know you and I have talked about it on the phone a little bit, but
yeah,
I'm interested in your thoughts on where do they go from here?
that's just such an all-encompassing
It
question.
Is an all-encompassing question,
and,
but it's all we got at this point.
Yeah. I will say this. We need to get to a few super chats here in a second, and we will. By the way, for those of you unfamiliar with the drill around here, if you have a question or you have a topic to bring to our attention that you absolutely have to have answered or want us to discuss, give it to us in super chat form. We cannot promise that we will get around to every single question in the chat throughout the show, but we do make you the promise every week that if you throw us a super chat, we will read it, we will respond to it, we will discuss it. And we've got several super chats already stacking up. But Brandon, look, where you go from here, you better game plan like your hair is on fire for Alabama and LSU, because quite frankly, and I did not expect we would be having this conversation. I think the Missouri loss on Saturday, especially the manner in which it happened, completely reshaped a lot of folks' perspective on this team and on Brent Venables. The reality is there's no guarantee that you even get to make the OC hire if you don't show enough against Alabama and LSU to make everybody believe that this thing isn't a sinking ship and that there is reason to think and believe that there's going to be a turnaround in year 4 and that this is not the start of a new downward trend. Because I don't agree with this, Brandon, by any means, but there are people saying, hey, this is John Blake over again, especially with the way that this team is just giving games away and continually self-sabotaging. And so if you want to kick that stigma, first and foremost, you have to make sure that you're around next year to kick it. And so you better game plan like a madman for Bama and LSU. And then once you walk off the field against in Baton Rouge, then at that point, you turn your attention fully towards hiring your next offensive coordinator. Ill Midnight threw us $10 in the super chat. It is his 10th contribution to the channel. Thank you, Ill Midnight. He says, will people finally admit that we are Missouri's rival now? We are at the same skill level. This is the second year in a row they'll end ranked ahead of us, and they beat us fair and square Saturday. And okay, that means there's a rivalry, Ill Midnight. Like, no, I don't agree with that. I'll use another example. 2022 and 2023, right? Kansas, they finished ranked ahead of Oklahoma in 22. They beat Oklahoma head-to-head in 23. Does that make OU Kansas a rivalry? No. I don't see Oklahoma Mizzou as a rivalry in the traditional sense. I think it has rivalry potential if both of those programs can stay relevant in the coming years, just because of how much animosity there is between the staffs. And you saw it, like Brent Venables didn't shake Eli Drinkwitz's hand after the game on Saturday. So there's beef there. There is. Is it a rivalry right this second? No, I truly don't think so. And it's hard to call it that when the series has been dormant for 13 years. But does it have the potential? Absolutely, it does. It certainly does.
I'll add a little bit to that. Like that weird ass comment he made about Bob Stoops. Like he thinks he's like funny and like edgy because he does it, but Milton off the Simpsons, dude, he's just a dork. He's a dork. And like I'm just calling it like it is, dude.
Okay, and
Like,
you know what? I get that, but hey, you don't want that guy smack talking you. You had an opportunity to do something about it on Saturday night, and
he smack talked a retired dude that has what won more than he could ever dream of as a coach.
oh yeah, no, understandable. Like
Bob
and I get all
Stoops
that,
isn't
but
even
like,
coaching, and he's smack talking a college football Hall of Famer.
yeah,
Know your place, Drinkwitz. Like, know your place.
but
He
look,
owned Missouri. He can
you
talk
win-
whatever shit he wants to talk. That's the truth. In his time, he kicked Missouri's ass every time he played him, except for like once. That's it.
yeah,
I don't
and
think, did he ever lose to Missouri? Oh, he did, 2010.
he
That's
did.
it.
He
That's it.
did. Or yeah,
2010.
2010, I guess. I was thinking
That's
that
it.
was 2011, but yeah, 2010.
2011.
I hear all that, and I agree with all that. Like of all the people to throw shade at, Bob Stoops maybe isn't the greatest or most reasonable target, but again,
He's a good coach.
you
He's just a dork. That's my point. He's a great coach. Dork.
again,
I mean, I just call it like I said.
he's taking a victory lap right now, and he has every right to do that after
He
Missouri won the
hopped in the
football game on
arms of
Saturday.
another man, like, and wrapped his legs around him.
Oh, are you talking about the Winery commitment? Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
come on, dude.
he did. And look, I'll keep coming back to it. If Oklahoma wanted to put Drink in his place, they had the opportunity to do that Saturday, and Missouri gave them the opportunity to do that on Saturday. They tried to give that game away, and Oklahoma gave it right back and then some.
Mhm.
So you're in for another year of Mizzou fans and their head coach and their players taking a victory lap because they went and earned it on Saturday. And I will say, it was not like I'm not exactly sure who Theo Weiss's beef is with because
The fans booed him whenever he was announced. That's what his beef is.
okay, well, I can't really tell whether he has it out for the fans or the staff or both or whatever, but it was cool to see a guy like that go and make the plays that he did against his former team. Even if Oklahoma was on the losing end of it, you have to tip your cap to a former Sooner who was a cornerstone of the program for 4 years, had some awesome moments in the Crimson and Cream, and then he gets one last shot at his former squad and performs the way he did. Probably his best game of the year. Maybe up there among the best games of his Missouri career. And that catch he made to tie the football game, really impressive snack. Blade 619234 threw $5 in the super chat. It is his third contribution to the channel. Thank you, Blade. He says, hypothetical, fellas. BV is fired. Who are the top 5 realistic head coaching candidates? Look,
I don't even want to really talk about it because
I don't either, but I'll say this. There's one guy that's at the top of the list.
yeah, you're Signetti, and I he's up there with me. You and I talked about it. When it comes to youthfulness, when it comes to people, I get Signetti. Signetti's has he ever really coached in this region? He's really been a Midwest East Coast guy, like his career, right? Like that's pretty much where he's been.
Well, it depends on what you mean by this region, because he was on staff at Alabama for 5 years as wide receivers coach and recruiting coordinator, and he was a member of the staff for I believe Nick Saban's first 2 national championships.
Okay,
certainly the first one.
Okay,
maybe the first two.
I overlooked that. That gives him more than credibility. You probably should go get him if you don't get Rhett Lashley's like way up there for me.
And
and I know what you're gonna say.
Yep.
SMU, they have all the deep pockets and stuff. It doesn't. I really don't think if you're Rhett Lashley, SMU compared to Oklahoma, you can still go get better recruits because of the Oklahoma brand. They're still doing it. They've gone 6-7 or 6-7, 10-3, and potentially 5-7 again. and they're still rocking top 10 classes, which means the talent he's going to roll in there with the potential to have amazing talent. Yep. Totally get that transfer portal and some dudes are going to go. I have a bad feeling about this offseason anyways. So I don't I'm a big Lashley guy. I'm a big Signetti guy. I think those would be my top two choices. You got to
And
swing for those two.
well, the difference to me is Signetti is far more feasibly hireable than Lashley because he is at Indiana, and yeah, he's making like what $5 million.
Yeah, but what's his
If
buyout?
if it comes down to it, Oklahoma can pay him more than Indiana can pay him, and obviously, if you're talking uh, conference situation, alignment, the size of the brand, the tradition, the heritage, like all of that. Oklahoma blows Indiana out of the water. Indiana had never won double-digit games in a season until Saturday when Signetti got them to 10-0. So if Oklahoma wanted to go and grab Signetti from Indiana, they could absolutely do that. I don't feel the same about Lashley. I don't feel like they could just go say, "Hey, Lashley, come on down," and he's headed up I-35.
I get it, but I mean, like everybody says, oh, well, Lashley would choose Arkansas over Oklahoma because he's from Springdale and because obviously that's his school and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, like Arkansas never wins. Like they just don't, it doesn't matter who coaches there, they don't win. He's not coaches. A lot of coaches aren't crazy enough to do that. And plus, I think they would go back the Bobby Petrino route if they could. I think that's where they want to go. So, I mean, they hired an offensive line coach to begin with from Georgia. He wasn't a coordinator. He was an offensive line guy. That's how far and how hard it is to hire guys at places like a Mississippi State, where granted they got Levy, but they got Levy because Zach Selman was the AD, and there's a strong long-term relationship between Levy and Selman. That's why that took place. So I don't. There's a lot of variables that go into that, and I hear what you're saying about Lashley. I'm interested. I don't know the buyouts for either one of them. Granted, so that to me, if you're going to be paying $44 million for Brent, which I still think they give Brent another year, and it's probably the safest move. As crazy as that sound, it's probably the safest move because you don't want to lose a whole top 10 recruiting class. You just don't. You don't. Like there's reasons why you do it. And if you can go and get an OC and that OC can come in and help change the fabric of that side of the ball, you know the defense is going to be good. It's Brent Venables. Like, and I hear people saying the defense isn't as good as we all thought it was going to be. Okay. It's not great. I don't think it's elite, but it's very good. It's a very good defense. When you're continually put up against with your back up against the wall because the offense is doing jack crap, you break. At some point, you're going to break. And for some odd reason, it's always in the worst time for Oklahoma, like at the fourth quarter, right? Or midway through the third quarter when they started to break this time. Like it's crazy because they're on the field so much because the offense can't ever get going. So now the defense feels like they have to score points that normally you're just there to stop points from scoring, not put points on the board too. But this defense is being asked to do both because the offense is so bad. And you can't win ball games like that. So I still think the defense is good. I still think they're going to be really good next year. They're going to be really talented. It's just if they can't iron out the offense, I just can't imagine a year 5 under right. Like that doesn't seem.
Yeah, I mean, there's no conversation to be had right now about year 5.
Oh, that's my point. Is
It's
like it's
at this
next
point
year
you
or
got to get through
bust
year
or
3, and then maybe you're talking about a year. But if it doesn't come together in year 4, I mean, forget it. David Chamberlain threw us $10 via the super chat. Thanks, David. He said there's a meeting next Wednesday Brent has with the Board of Regents, Joe C. and Joe H. So we'll see how that goes. I still support BV. I think he will get it fixed. Yeah, and anybody who looks at a meeting like that as potential doomsday for Brent Venables, right? Like there's no reason to make any decisions right now prior to the end of the season. I am of the belief that these last 2 games will tell you everything you need to know about where the Brent Venables era is headed. So I imagine the Board of Regents, Joe C and Joe H, all see that. They're all on the same page with that. I don't know what that meeting is going to entail, what those conversations are going to look like, but I think there are a lot of folks in that building that still believe in BV, but quite understandably, their faith has been shaken as of late. Certainly, after the way that they lost that Missouri game, if that faith wasn't already shaken, that rocked it pretty seismically. So we'll know here in the next 3 weeks, I think, where this is headed.
Yeah, no, I've I think the worst. This is a worst case scenario for Oklahoma because ABC decided they were going to put that game on national television, prime time, where everybody like if it like that to me, if it goes bad the way that it possibly could, and it's like a 34-6 game or 28-7 game or something to that extent, that's could be the worst case scenario for everything.
DeWitt Matthews with his 3rd contribution. Thank you, DeWitt. It is a contribution of $5. He says, who do you start at quarterback? Thompson, Arnold, or Hawkins? I'll tell you this much, folks. Where I stand on this, and I mentioned it today on the radio, it's an exact inverse order of the depth chart. I think you start Casey Thompson against Alabama. If not Thompson, then Michael Hawkins. I don't think you can go back to Jackson Arnold. It's just not working. It's not working. And how many times do you feel the need to try and make it work? Because that performance against Missouri on Saturday night was just irredeemable. There was no redeeming quality to Jackson Arnold's performance in that game. It was as bad a single game effort as I have watched from an actual starting quarterback at Oklahoma, not just a guy who got thrust into the role a la Davis Bevel in 2022 or Cody Thomas in 2014. Just flat out bad. And the most egregious mistake, obviously, was the fumble that cost Oklahoma the game, because that is the one thing you absolutely cannot do right there. If you throw an incompletion, fine, you can punt there and you're going to overtime. If you throw a pick, certainly that is far less than ideal, but at least you give your defense a chance to hold. You give the opposing kicker a chance to miss a field goal and still send the game to overtime. But if you gift wrap a touchdown to the opposition, well, you're officially screwed. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. So I say Casey Thompson because as I see it right now, that is the only avenue you have not yet explored. And I think you owe it to the kid to let him take a shot based on what has already happened this season with Arnold and Hawkins. And if you're unwilling to give Casey Thompson that chance for whatever reason, I think it has to be Hawkins, just because I think there's a much higher percentage right now that he is the future at Oklahoma than there is that Arnold is the future. That is how I see it.
I think Thompson should get a chance. I don't know. I think both. It feels like Arnold, and I get it. Like he's processing slow right now, and it's weird. I talked to somebody, and I told you all this in a group text, within the walls of the Switzer Center, and they said it's when he drops back to pass, it's PTSD. Like he drops his eyes to see who's coming at him because he doesn't trust the offensive line at all. And that's the difference between a first down and an incomplete pass a lot of times, because the windows in college and NFL, the windows are super tight. Particularly when you're running RPOs, like you can't drop your eyes. Your eyes have to be fixated on your read and all that type of stuff. And he's not doing that. He's dropping to see who's coming from his left, who's right, up the middle, like, and there's no trust there. So every time he drops back to pass, it's PTSD. He feels like he has to run for his life or hold on to the ball and try to make something happen because it hasn't been happening for him. So I think his confidence is shot. I really do. And on the flip side, I think Thompson will get you in the right play. I think he may not be as mobile as those guys are, but he may not have to be because he can sit there and tell the running back, hey, this guy's coming because he's so smart. Like, I wish people understood how smart this kid is. He's a savant. He knows what the defense is doing just on looks. You can't disguise a lot to a 7th-year guy that's been through, worked under Sark, worked under Herman, and Beck. Like, you cannot disguise a lot with them. You're talking about 3 just smart offensive mind guys. And I, so I guess I agree. If you're not going to go with Arnold, you got to go with Thompson, because I think at this point in the season, putting Arnold and Hawkins and ruining them even more against Bama and LSU would just be an awful decision. That's just my opinion. And it's not that I don't think they can't do it. I just think that they don't trust the offensive line, and who can blame them at this point? Yeah. Like, you're without Sexton, you're without Taylor, you're without Hatchett. Like, you're without 3 of your better offensive linemen. That's not a good scenario if you're Oklahoma and you're relying on guys that you probably aren't, that you didn't think you had to rely on, like Spencer Brown, right? Or 75% Tarquin, maybe, even if that was good. Like, BB even said he wasn't even close to being ready. So there's so much that could go wrong that you don't want to ruin those guys even more.
Yeah, well, BB didn't say he wasn't close to being ready, because I mean, obviously he was. Otherwise, he doesn't shoot and make the trip. But what he said was he couldn't help us win, and it was clear if you watched.
Oh, I took it as he wasn't close. When he said something like close, I can't remember the exact quote, but
yeah, it was clear when he was warming up that, like, he was not going to be able to move laterally quickly enough to be able to play tackle effectively against an SEC edge rusher. So. He gets a bye week to heal up now. You'd expect he's available for Alabama, but you got to get him back because Spencer Brown is not it. Not it. Now, we had a $5 super chat from Brandon, not Drumm. It is his very first contribution. He says, what's the draw for a top OC to risk their career trying to fix everything under BV only to possibly be fired in a year? Well, look, first off, I don't think that's true. And this is why I think it makes sense. You're not risking your career as an OC trying to fix everything under BV. You're literally stepping into a no-lose situation. You are virtually guaranteed total absolution, because what you're going to have is a very strong core of receivers. You're going to have a half-decent quarterback, whether that's Michael Hawkins or a portal guy or Jackson Arnold. Like, I don't think anybody is under the impression that Jackson Arnold is all of a sudden bad at football, even though he's played like it recently. There's still something to be tapped there. It hasn't been tapped. And I don't know what it's going to take to tap it, but you're going to have a quarterback. You're going to have a strong core receivers. You're going to have a strong backfield. You're going to have some good pieces on the offensive line, and they have to gel, certainly. They have to learn to play cohesively as a unit, which this year's unit has not. But you're going to cycle out some of those veterans and bring up guys like Eddie Pierre-Louis and Isaiah Autry-Dent and the like that offer some promise. Michael Fasusi could certainly start from the jump at Oklahoma. So if this thing goes south, like, let's say Venables is back in 2025, he hires a new OC, and everything still just goes to crap. As the offensive coordinator, you get a mulligan. Like, nobody's going to hold you accountable for that. The blame is going to fall on Venables. And unless your offense is just abysmal, which it shouldn't be with those pieces, The rest of the industry will look upon you as somebody that was a casualty of a doomed situation at Oklahoma, and you will quite easily get a pass to go be an OC somewhere else or be a head coach, even. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility. And if you do help turn things around, you know you're going to be in for a hefty raise because people at OU are going to be collectively exhaling. Thank God they got this fixed. We're cooking again. And so you increase your earning potential, and you also set yourself up for some even better offensive coordinator and or head coaching gigs. So that's why I think that makes sense. And I don't think the situation at Oklahoma, or I guess the tenuous nature of the situation at Oklahoma, is going to be a major inhibitor to any offensive coordinator, because they're not falling on the sword if Oklahoma sucks next year. They don't have to. Mason Sokolowski contributed $5. And he said, you might have already covered this, but do you guys think Brent gets fired this year? I think one more year, but who knows? I would lean towards one more year, Mason.
Yeah.
The only way I think that doesn't happen is if Oklahoma just gets taken behind the woodshed these next 2 weeks against Alabama and LSU.
What
And
do you think the score
like
would have to be?
the team.
What do you think the score would have to be for that to take for both those games? Like for me, I think it's like a 28-6.
It would have to be a
type deal.
blowout of at least 25 points in both instances, I would say.
Very possible, by the way.
Yes, but anyway, to answer the question, yes, I would obviously I would lean in the direction of Brent Venables getting a fourth year. I think what he's going to what's going to happen is, again, unless it's just abysmal against Bama and LSU, he's going to be handed all the resources he needs to succeed in 2025. He's going to be given leeway and a lot of money to hire his offensive coordinator of choice. And there will be a message from the administration down that you're going to fix this and you're going to win in 2025, or it is absolutely positively over. Jacob Matthews threw us another $10 and said, just joining, but I think BV should get one more year. Of course, he has to knock the OC hire out of the park. Maybe I'm crazy, but I still believe in BV. Everything that could go wrong has. And boy, ain't that the truth.
Cursed.
Ain't that the truth?
Yep. I don't know.
Obviously, Venables is not in control of the top 5 wide receivers getting on the roster getting hurt, or both of your starting offensive tackles getting hurt, or your starting Cheetah, who's a linchpin of your defense, getting hurt. That's beyond his control. And yes, you can certainly make the argument, and you should, that the Sooners should have been performing and should be performing better with the cast of characters that they do have than they have been performing. But it's pretty inarguable that if this team is anywhere close to full health, they're playing much better football right now.
Yeah. They're healthy through the whole year. Like, I honestly believe that you're looking at they're 5-5. They're probably 6-4, 7-3, something to that extent. I mean, like, it's not doomsday scenario at that point. But unfortunately,
Lee Bird gave us $2. He said, dude, Missouri sucks bad, LMAO. Drew Pine is the worst quarterback OU's lost to, and I don't know how long, Brandon. And I'll give him credit for that big boy throw to Theo Weiss to tie the game. But, man, it was futility for 3 quarters for Drew Pine. He was getting booed, lustily booed, by that home Missouri crowd.
What is Brent Venables' biggest win? Not throw Texas out. Texas doesn't count. We all know that's the biggest win.
Okay, well, I don't know what the answer is then.
Talking to somebody last night that said SMU, and then I said Kansas, but it's still Kansas. See, that bothers me to say, because they're 19th at the time.
Is there a case that it's Tulane?
I mean, yeah, they're ranked 25th now, right?
So David Chamberlain gave us another $10. Thanks, David. He said, keep in mind, if OU fires BV, the program will lose so many players, current and coming in, and most likely some coaches, and OU will look like what FSU is going through, and OU can't and won't go that route. Yes and no, David. On the one hand, yes, there will be an exodus, both from the roster and the recruiting class, if Brent Venables is not retained. But it's a great example that somebody brought to my attention on the radio today via the text line. It happens to refer to the very same individual that I think OU should throw a bag at if they're ready to move on from Brent Venables at season's end. Kurt Cignetti in Indiana. You look at that starting offense for the Hoosiers, 10 of the 11 starters were not on the roster at IU last year. So if you hire the right guy and he brings in the right people and you have the proper vision and you have the proper foundation and you're willing to go out of your way to do what is necessary to bring in top flight portal talent, then you can absolutely replace all of what you lost in a single offseason. It takes some doing, but you can do it. Florida State is kind of Oklahoma's saving grace right now because that's about the only thing preventing them from being the laughingstock of college football.
100%.
Gosh, that team is bad.
So we're going to get to the other. We'll get Chase. We'll get to you and Steve Rollo because they're good questions. But well, I'll just answer Chase's. There's zero chance he's going to be demoted to defensive coordinator.
Forget that. We
That's
got
other. But I'm going to throw this out here. That extension that he got this summer, and that's where some of the buyout issues come into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the elongated contract. Looking back at that, could that be a fireable offense in its own right?
If you're referring to Joe C, like
No, I'm just it's the big broad spectrum of questioning because 6 and 7, 10 and 3 with a really easy schedule is not normally how you go about. And I had trouble even defending that this summer. And now there's zero defense of it.
Yeah. Lee Bird gave us another $2.
You're not even going to answer my question. Like,
was that a question?
No, it was a question. What do you think? Like what's your?
I wasn't following the question.
The general. Well, what's your overall thought on looking back at it? If you're the donors, and they were asked to do that, how mad do you have to be at that? Number one. Number two, does that put other people's feet to the fire that were a part of that decision?
No, it does. It does. And that's, it does not reflect very well on Joe Castiglione right now. It doesn't. And it looks in hindsight, and I know we're only 4 months removed from it. There's still time for things to change, but it looks like a really bad investment on OU's part. We're being objective. It does. It looks like you just extended the guy that you're going to fire shortly. Now, that may happen and that may not happen, but most anybody, whether in the Sooner State or out of it, would look at that decision to extend Brent Venables prior to this season and say, ugh, that seems like it was a little bit premature. Lee Bird gave us another $2 and said, what I meant to ask is, will they give CT a chance? We talked about that a little earlier, Lee. I think they should. Now, will they? I don't know. I cannot speak to that definitively right now. Jacob Matthews gave us $5 and said, when you're looking at OC hires, do you put the guys who can potentially bring a QB with them at the top, such as the Tulane OC? I don't know. I don't really think so. Like, I think you hire the best offensive coordinator for the job, whatever that looks like, whether he's got a QB lined up or not. You have to hire the guy that you think and that you're confident is the right dude for the job, because everything's riding on this. Everything's riding on this for Brent Venables. You don't get this hire right, you're cooked. And your whole staff is cooked. That's just the long and short of it.
Yeah. And then obviously there's we've Steve Rollo. What's the latest on Fasusi and all other 25 class recruits? I'm seriously concerned about holding this amazing group together. Look, Fasusi's getting pushed by Texas, and Fasusi brought up Texas A&M, but that looks like that's Lamont Rogers is kind of quickly moving in that direction. Um, I'm in the middle of this podcast or live. I was text. You hear anything on Fasusi? Looking around and everything. Look, Fasusi is supposed to be at the Bama game. That could be a good or bad thing. I'm going to lean on bad if he looks at it as, oh my God, they're getting their butt kicked. Or it could be good. He feels like he can come in and start day one. I don't know. Like there's two sides to look at it. Recruits think differently, so it is what it is. Texas is really trying to flip him. Up until recently, Fasusi family wasn't real keen on Texas, but Texas is doing all they can to try to kind of iron that whole thing out and make the flip. Oklahoma needs to hold on for 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks. You got 3 more weeks and you're in the clear, which I also think that the fact that National Signing Day comes at the beginning of December makes it very hard to fire coaches or, and hear me out on this, they fire them several weeks after National Signing Day. And those kids, unfortunately, as long as they don't go to class, they can get out of their national letter of intent and go to some other school. Like, I don't know how all that plays out. It's crazy how 2 weeks can change everything because normally you fire the first week or the last week of November. You have somebody hired the first week of December and they go balls to the wall recruiting for the next 2 weeks, 18 days or 11, 10 days, making sure that that class is completely ironed out. They go and they get all the portal guys they can get in that amount of time. They literally don't sleep. They're always busy, always working, always recruiting up until that time is up. You don't really have that time. Like the timeline is so different. It's going to be interesting to see how the coaching firing works. Because if you're going to me, if you were going to do it, you'd have to do it after the Bama game to even make it worth your while. So that you could give the next staff or the next head coach at least time to at least hold on to whatever he could and then go from there. Right? Like this is crazy, man.
Yeah.
This new
Wild
timeline's
times.
crazy.
Carlton Belfort gave us $5. It's his very first contribution. Thank you, Carlton. He says, have you guys had the thought that if we get this OC right, that maybe the SEC isn't this year's SEC and what Alabama will miss and so on and so forth? I guess I'm not completely following that question. But I here's the deal. And maybe nobody wants to hear this right now, and I get that. And I'm going to sound like Lincoln Riley for a second. It doesn't feel like Oklahoma is that far off personnel-wise, Brandon.
All right, Lincoln.
What has to get better?
We're close.
Well, what has to get better is the execution. The execution is what sucks. There's enough talent, man. There's enough talent on this roster. They've got to get better with execution. And some of that falls on coaching and some of it doesn't. Because, for instance, you can't coach fumbles out of guys. Deion Burks gets the ball popped out. Peyton Bowen muffs a punt. Jackson Arnold just flat out drops the ball on the ground on 2 different occasions. Like, well, as a coach, what can you do about that, man? But by the same token, you look at the way that this offense has performed to this point in the season, and they're not really doing a great job of scheming guys open. They're not creating mismatches. They're doing a lot of, frankly, dumb stuff that just has no hope of working, like running jet sweeps to a tight end. What are we doing? What are we doing here? It's stuff like that. And that, the personnel management, where Xavier Robinson is either not going to play against Alabama and LSU, or he will play against Alabama and LSU and burn his red shirt because he played 2 meaningless snaps apiece against Texas and Ole Miss. That type of stuff is going to drive so many people nuts when they look back on this season in retrospect on everything that it entailed and how Oklahoma got to where they are right now, which is playing bad football. So execution has got to get better. Again, some of that's on coaching, some of that's not. But if Oklahoma gets the OC hire right, Brandon, there's no reason why they can't play with pretty much anybody in the SEC next year. I think the defense has the potential to be better. Obviously, the offense should and will be substantially better just by virtue of the guys that aren't available right now that you would assume will return in 2025.
Theoretically, yeah. But you can tell that I'm a believe it when you see it type guy now. Like there's not a lot of, I don't have a lot of trust in anything that goes on within this program right now. Just from a optic standpoint, it just doesn't. I never thought I would see the day that a Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Kansas, Kansas State, Nebraska again, like they're viewed as just better teams, better programs than Oklahoma at this juncture. And that I think that's bullcrap is what it is. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Unacceptable. And how it got to this point is like I can't put my finger on it. Like I just can't. Like everybody, you can't just point and say, well, because he hired Seth Luttrell as OC. No, there's so many other things that caused this to happen. And it was a lack of, for a better term, institutional control within the football program. They just let everything go. And sometimes micromanaging is the worst type of managing. And I think he's a very micromanaging type of guy. And sometimes look, when you overwork people, sometimes you don't get the best out of them on game days because they're already beat. They're already exhausted. I think if I was to tell BV one thing, he's got to learn to balance some of this. You know, the best thing Bob Stoops ever did was he had family day on Wednesdays. He didn't overwork his assistants. He didn't overwork his players. There was a balance. They were businesslike. They worked hard. But there was a give and take, if you will. And I don't know that there is a give and take right now within this program.
Yeah.
They're doing ones versus ones on Tuesday and Wednesday, full pads, bro. In the middle of the season. I talked to a recruit, a running back that went off, preferred walk-on. And I was asking them what they saw at some of these places like A&M, Ole Miss, LSU, Auburn, Arkansas, when they went during the spring to see where they were going to go that following fall. And excuse me, they wasn't the following. It was there. They went during the season. Excuse me. And they said that even they would spend a couple of days there and they never saw them go crazy with hitting. Like they would hit, they would wrap up, never to the ground. Shorts, shoulder pads, helmet one day, shorts and t-shirts, helmet the next day. Never really going crazy. They went to Oklahoma. They loved the program, the culture, and everything. But what scared them the most was the constant contact and wearing the body down. Their dad just so happens to be a physical trainer. And that was one of his biggest no-nos was seeing them do that contact, wearing down. What have we seen from BB's teams Even last year, you saw it at the end of the year. They wear down. They wear down.
Yeah.
And so what 3 years, man, how can you not figure that out yet? That you're doing that to your team?
Yeah. The Healthy Homestead in the chat says, I can tell Drummond Thune haven't listened to Gabe yet. You guys need to go listen to him and Teddy before you do this show. Thune is wrong again on Brown, according to Gabe. Go listen to Gabe. Look, that's all fine and well. Obviously, respect the work that Gabe and Teddy do. Teddy is a radio colleague of mine. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. I relay what my eyes tell me, and my eyes tell me Spencer Brown isn't any good. So if Gabe has a different take, that's fine. I respect his opinion. And I would imagine he respects mine in that regard. Ebo threw us $5 and said, hypothetical, you get an OC and their current QB. Who do you take? Spavital / Robinson, Arbuckle / Mateer, Craddock / Mensa, Kitley / Hammond. Yeah, give me Craddock and Mensa out of that group. Either Craddock and Mensa or Arbuckle and Mateer. One of those two.
Mateer's good.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. I'll take
Another
Craddock though.
Yeah, another $5 from Roger. It's his 5th contribution to the channel. Thanks, Roger. He says, you guys' opinion, will OU be better on both sides of the ball next year and go at least 10-2? Holy smokes, Roger.
Whoa, no.
Let's not even entertain that conversation right now, because much is contingent upon what Oklahoma does in the portal this offseason. That is going to dictate a lot of how I feel about this team going into next year. Right now, would I look at OU and say, yeah, they're going to go 10-2 next year? No, I don't know how anybody could bear witness to this season and already have that expectation for 2024 or 2025, excuse me. Maybe expectations are loftier after the portal window in January, once we get an idea of what this roster is going to look like in its next iteration. But right now, no. Yeah, I think they'll be better on both sides of the ball, but 10-2, ugh. That's a major stretch right now.
Better, yes. And to your point about the portal, Parker, I think something that needs to be addressed is people are worried about the donors holding back money because they're pissed off about the program, which they are. They are. They're not happy. But that's not how you fix things. You fix things by putting more money in to the NIL pot and saying, you go, like, look, we're going to give you, instead of buying out your contract for $44 million, we're going to give you $25 million. You better go get the best freaking transfer portal class and the best 26 class you possibly can get right now and fix this damn thing. Yeah. And that is what should happen. Is it going to happen? I don't know. You got to get the right people to convince them. I think Joe Haraz could be that guy. I think if Joe C talks to the right guys, he can get guys to do it. I think this is where, and call me crazy, this is where a Bob Stoops could come into play big time and really be that middleman to the donors to convince them, like, hey, we need you to do big things right now and really help out this program NIL-wise. Dump as much money as you possibly can into that pot and let us go cook.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, this isn't going to get fixed. And buying out that contract and getting a new head coach and having to buy out all the other assistants contract, that's going to be more expensive than just throwing $25-30 million in the pot and saying, you go buy whatever class you can freaking transfer portal guys you can buy right now. All expenses paid, and go do it.
We have a few more super chats to speed through here. PSS threw us $5 and said, do you consider Cignetti a coach with SEC experience? Was under Saban in his first Bama season, i.e. long ago. Why not pursue a young, ambitious SEC dude? Because quite frankly, PSS, I don't care about young. I don't care about ambitious. I don't care about SEC. And neither should you. I will go as far as to say that what you should care about is one thing, and that is the one thing that Curt Cignetti does: winning football games.
Google him.
Remember what? Yeah, remember what he said when he got hired in Indiana. I win. Google me. That is the type of head ball coach that you should want at the helm of your program. A guy that, by hook or by crook, whatever it looks like, whatever his methodology is, a guy that is winning football games, because that is ultimately the goal. The goal is to win. You play to win the game, as Herm Edwards once said. So give me a guy that wins. Regardless of how old he is, regardless of what he looks like, regardless of where he comes from, give me a guy that's going to win at Oklahoma. That should be, to me, the only priority. Let me get to our next super chat here. Here you go.
Hold on. Max swearing. I don't even know. Swearingen. I think that's how you pronounce it. These coaches are not good talent evaluators. What? What? You probably, before you say stuff like that, and I'm not trying to call you out, I'm just telling you the truth. Go look at who offered all those guys that OU has on the roster. Because if OU is not a good talent evaluator, that means Nick Saban wasn't. That means Sarkisian wasn't. That means Kirby Smart wasn't. That means Josh Heupel at Tennessee wasn't. That means Brian Kelly at LSU wasn't. Like the list goes on and on. All these guys have offers from like major programs. Most of them are top 250 guys in the country. It has nothing to do with it. It has a lot to. There were so many other variables to this.
Yeah.
Than talent evaluation.
Keandre Bogus gave us $5. He said, "Do you think that the offensive staff has ruined JA? He didn't look this bad with Lebby. Why would JA or Hawk trust OU to bring in a competent OC?" Well, if you're going to be at OU,
Yes.
do you really have a choice but to trust him to bring in a competent OC? And I mean, are you really going to leave because you don't trust them to bring in a competent OC? Yeah, like Brent Venables whiffed on the Seth Luttrell hire. We can all acknowledge that. Is that enough of a sample size to conclude, oh, he's going to whiff again? I'm not going to get developed here at Oklahoma. I should leave. I don't think either of those guys are thinking like that.
Segoy English 1. Not Segoy, excuse me. Sooner Born says, I guess the staff does not develop players, which I would disagree for the most part. That defense has been developed. It's way better than it was when BV arrived. And offensively, people are going to hate me. They're going to say, oh, Lord Beatonbow, whatever. That dude has developed a lot of really good offensive linemen. Has this been a down year for him development wise or injury wise and all of the above wise? Yes, absolutely. But I think before you call him out, 11, 12 years of good offensive line, this year has been awful. It sucked. The offensive line sucks this year. He has to hope that his classes in 23, 24, and 25 live up to their billing. Because if they don't, then yeah, there's an issue. I'm going to bet that they're going to live up to the billing, Parker, because that's a lot of really good, talented players. But that's just me.
I don't think Bill Beatonbow will field a crappy offensive line 2 years in a row. And
No.
again, both of his starting tackles are hurt right now. So that certainly isn't helping matters. Carlton Belford followed up on his earlier super chat with another $5. Thanks, Carlton. I meant if the OC hire is right, then we have a good shot at being a top team next year. Maybe the top of the SEC isn't so defined. Thoughts? Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think you're spot on with that assessment. Yeah, Oklahoma can be right there at the top of the SEC if they hire a great OC, but that's not the only problem they have to solve. Right? They have got to execute better as a football program because execution has been abysmal this season. It is entirely possible that this team hires their new offensive czar and is right back to their winning ways next year. Because as I look at it, especially post Luttrell, Oklahoma, there's enough talent on this roster. There's going to be enough guys returning from injury next year that you're going to field a pretty competitive roster just in terms of raw ability. If the execution is there, they can absolutely be really, really, really good. Let me get to our next one here.
Real quick, Sooner born, barely top 25 in the transfer portal. OU doesn't take a lot of transfers. I think that's where you're talking about. Maybe I'm misreading it. Or you're talking the defense, maybe barely being in the top 25, but a top 25 defense is generally looked upon as a good defense. So,
Okay, a couple more. BG, $5. First super chat ever. Thanks, BG. Wasn't Craddock the play caller during the Morris disaster at Arkansas? Yes, he was. He was Chad Morris's offensive coordinator at SMU and at Arkansas. And look, I
thought the
completely get
defense
it if
was
that's
the
your
issue,
reservation with Joe
then.
Craddock. Like, I get it if that's your reservation with Joe Craddock. That was the worst era of Arkansas football that there has ever been by a mile. But he has rehabbed his image and his reputation significantly over the last 5 years.
Was it, well, I mean, look, they recruited really well. How many years did Morris get at Arkansas, by the way?
2.
3?
Not
2.
even 2.
Not even 2. So, yeah, it was bad, but they recruited so well that homeboy ended up winning in year one because he had all that talent that was recruited in there. Like, they did well recruiting, but they did not have talent going into that. Petrino and everybody he didn't recruit very well. That's one thing Bobby Petrino did not do as a head coach at Arkansas was recruit well consistently. Anyways, go ahead.
Pittman did not win year one at Arkansas, by the way. He was 3-7 that year.
No. Like 2 years, like year 2, he was what, 8-4, something like that, right?
9-4. 9-4.
Yeah.
That's as good as it's been at Arkansas. He's
Yeah.
9-4, 7-6, 4-8.
But that's off of Morris's recruiting classes, so.
Sniper Raptor gave us $10. Thank you, Sniper Raptor. It's his very first contribution. He said, BB has to go, man. Forget all that talk. 2 losing seasons. Big donors want him out of here. And yeah, look, there are those that are out on Brent Venables. There are. I'd be lying if I said that wasn't the case, but there are also plenty of people that still believe in Brent Venables. And that's why you're paying very close attention to what happens these final 2 games of the season and how this team looks, how this team responds in the face of adversity, in the face of daunting circumstances where they got to secure a massive upset victory or they're not going bowling.
Who is giving excuses for Brent Venables right now? I feel like we've done a whole podcast not like just bashing the tenure, and we're being called as giving excuses. Like I fail to.
He didn't use the word excuses. And
No. Mark's
Oh.
swearing, and they love giving excuses for BV on here. He is not a head coach.
He has one excuse this year, and that excuse is injuries.
Yeah.
And it's a valid excuse. It doesn't excuse everything. It does not excuse the half of it, but it is a contributing factor. And anybody that would say otherwise is just being irrational, because you lose 6 or 7 of your most talented football players. Yeah, you're going to struggle, especially at positions like wide receiver and offensive tackle. $2 from Mason Sokolowski. This should be our last super chat, I believe, before we wrap up. Oh, no, we just got another one. Does OU hire Josh Heupel as next head coach? Realistic? I don't think he's leaving Tennessee, and I wouldn't either if I were him. He's got it rolling.
It has nothing to do with the Bob Stoops stuff because they've made amends from everything I've heard. At least there's not a lot of animosity. I will say that I was told that when his mom was going through everything that she went through, cancer and everything, that he really wished that he was back around this region to be around there. His sister still lives here. His dad still lives in Edmond. Like they run a 7-on-7 organization and they do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he has better access to talent from the Georgia area, the Alabama area, the Mississippi area, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. Like, he's in a really good spot for talent. And obviously Tennessee. And he's got that thing rolling. He's king in Tennessee. I don't know that he would want to go through that again, like being ousted if things didn't go right. I think he could handle it not going right at Tennessee. Not going right twice at his alma mater, the place that he loves dearly, is not something I just don't think he wants to go through that. I'll leave it at that.
$2 from Sheldon Lee. Is it insane to think Todd Bates as head coach? Great coach. I think he might be a good head coach. That's not a direction Oklahoma can go. At least not right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think
You
he'll be a
gotta
good coach, but
you
I don't
gotta
think,
you gotta cut your teeth somewhere other than Oklahoma, I think, especially after the way that the Venables era has gone to this point.
yeah.
This program is probably going to want somebody that has done it before. Damon Haymans threw us $5 and said BV is one of the best defensive minds. When do you think he knew this offense was crap? Spring? And shoot, I don't know. I'm not inside Brent Venables' head. And obviously, if he did think this offense was crap, he would never say it publicly. I'll say this though, Brandon, like I I don't think there were any glaring red flags preseason that this offense is just going to be abysmal. Like, okay, yes. Were there some signs that maybe you have some things to work through offensively? Sure. But I don't know if anybody could have foreseen the offense being this bad because it didn't look like it on the practice field.
Yeah, there was just I don't know. Offensive line, we kept hearing issues, but the resounding sentiment from people was, well, that defensive line's really good. And it has been really good. Like, I mean, there's that what you've seen from the defensive line, one of the best rush defenses in college football, one of the best tackle for losses, one of the best QB hurry ratios or percentages. They're way up there in sacks. I think they're top 10 in sacks. So I mean, it just there was a lot of reason to feel like it was because they were going up against OU's defense. And at the end of the day, that's just not the case. David Chamberlain, yep, they beat the Clippers. Thunder up. All right.
Mr. Dilligaff, this is hopefully going to be our last super chat.
Yep.
Is it possible that the offense is injured more than the defense because the defense just beat the heck out of them in spring/fall and the season? I'll let you take that one, Brandon, then we can get out of here.
Oh God, Parker. There's some validity to it. I'll put it to you like this. They've recruited so well on the defensive line that if you look at the roster, they can rotate about 20 guys and still be really good on the defensive line. And I'm talking about between defensive ends and the interior guys. Like, there's a drop off, but there's not a drop off to the extent that you would see back even in 2022. Like, that's how good they are in the defensive front and how talented they are. That's why we feel the defense is going to be so good in 2025 because the defensive line is just going to be insane next year as long as everybody stays. You look at the offensive line, and scholarships have been taken away to go give it to defensive because they were trying to rebuild that defense. That was their mindset. The defense has been what's been holding everybody back. Let's just move on and give some scholarships that normally go to the offensive line, to tight end, to wide receiver, to running back, and give it to positions, whether it's linebacker, defensive back, safety, defensive line. And you had maybe 12 guys on the offensive line. Well, when you can rotate in a 100-play scrimmage, 20 guys, and you only have 12 guys on the offensive line, you have guys taking way more snaps than they probably should have in the throes of summer, going 1-versus-1, getting beat up multiple times a week. Yes. That was awful. Hindsight 2020, probably shouldn't have done that. But when you talk to certain people within the program, that's what they've been doing every year. But they've always had more offensive linemen than they've had this year. And therein lies your problem. You're getting beat up. I also think confidence has a lot to do with it. When you're getting beat up by a really good defensive line, sometimes it makes you better. Sometimes you lose all your confidence. And when you add injuries, when you add being banged up to your confidence being knocked around and just beat the crap out of you constantly on a day in and day out basis, you see the results that you get during the season. They've got to somehow fix that. And what they've done by fixing that is they're bringing in 4 guys in 2025, right? They're only losing one guy 2 guys, maybe, Parker, through attrition, through graduation, right? Maybe 3 as far as that. And then they're going to bring in portal guys. So you're going to be plus as it is on the offensive line through the freshmen coming in. And then you're going to bring in 2 or 3 guys to the portal. So you should have 16, 17 guys. 16, 17 guys versus 20 is way easier done and less repetition, less bumps and bruises, less wear and tear than it is 12, 11, 12 guys. And you have to, the 12 guys is the max. When they're not healthy, you've only got 9 guys, 8, 10 guys. Then you're really getting the crap beat out because you got 2 times the amount of players on the defensive line going up against half the players on the offensive line in rotations. So there is a plethora of reasons why all this went sour. Parker and I can discuss that at a later date because it's deeper than people think. And I'll just leave it at that. Is that the best way to put it, Parker?
Yeah,
So,
I'm with it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor, Sooners YouTube Live. If you're a college student, if you're a military, happy Veterans Day to the veterans. Want to thank those that served before me, served now, served with me, served. I mean, it's awesome. I being in the Air Force was awesome. And I'm not saying that for people to say thank you for your service. I'm just telling you, like, the military branch is awesome. It's a fun deal. Parker can tell you his wife is in it right now. It's a brotherhood, sisterhood that is hard to replicate. So thank you so much for their service, for protecting our rights, our freedoms. Thank you so much. And because of that, look, if you're a military person and or a college student, if you can email us, ouinsider@rivals.com, and you can say, I'm active duty and I'm in the military, and you can prove that, we will send you a promo code to get OU Insider for $11.95 for a whole year. That's less than $1 a month. So comes out in averages. Same thing with college student. Teacher, doesn't matter. If you email us from a .edu and say, hey, I want the promo code, we will give you the promo code. You can go sign up, get OU Insider for $11.95 for a whole year. Again, military, you prove it. Teacher, college student, whatever, prove it that you are, and you email us from those emails. We will give you $11.95, and the promo code ouinsider@rivals.com is the email. Everybody else, $9.95 a month, $99.95 for the whole year. It's good. Look, there's going to be a lot of talk about the offensive coordinator. We've got a ton of, what we've been hearing, the latest, all that type of stuff's on OU Insider right now. It's been fun. And there's lots to talk about recruiting as National Signing Day gets closer. How's OU going to close out? Transfer portal. Just so much going on at OU Insider. VIP basketball season, then softball, baseball, then we roll around in the spring. Then you got all the official visits. Then you've got all the commit season. Then you're right back into fall camp. So there is so much going on right now. OU Insider VIP. Hit us up. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drumm. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Jani-King. You all have a blessed night.